Hello, and welcome to a very exciting pilot episode
The debut
of something that has been long planned. For episode 1, I'm going to be joined by Sam.
Hello.
This is a new series that we are calling for now Anatomy of a Classic, where, we do love the album deep dives. They're really fun. It does take a lot of time and effort, both in the research and in the coordinating the meetup to have enough time to do it, and in the editing, which I'm definitely feel.
Yeah. I do not pull my weight in the editing department.
That's fine. You bring 99% of the comedy. So, but I wanted to do something a bit different. And also, aside from all that, sometimes, you rush through your notes on an album and you kind of feel like you had so much more to say, which is why I thought of this series. And it would also be able to highlight, this is not an example of that, but artists that we are never going to cover their full discographies, be able to shine a light. As you can see, we are doing Peter Gabriel's seminal 1986 album So. We will be doing a Peter Gabriel discography ranking, so if you really, really don't want any spoilers, I'll give you permission to click off and watch once that's out in a few months.
The fact that we're talking about it shows that, unless this series is what you think is just going to be us going in on an album that we hate, we think a bit about this album.
Yeah, so, you don't know actually how much I think about it all.
Well, no.
Yeah, we'll see. So, because we haven't actually talked about it yet, ever, which is quite interesting. Because I only heard it for the first time a couple months ago. Samuel's going to be on episode 1. We're going to have a rotating...
Yeah, don't worry, I'm not going to stick around.
rotating series of guests for the first season, as I'm calling it. There'll be Vanessa and Andrew, who appeared in the end-of-year recap, are going to come on to talk about Hands of Love by Kate Bush. Aidan, who's not been on the channel yet, will be on to talk about Quadrophenia by The Who. Chris is going to be on to talk about Hunky Dory by David Bowie. Tavi and Clay, who I've mentioned, are going to be on the Rush ranking, are coming on to talk about Close to the Edge by Yes. There are others I'm forgetting, but we've got a lot of guests lined up for the first season, and then we'll probably do a second season where Sam will be back for the first episode and we'll run through the same people, going through different albums. So we're kind of figuring out the structure as we go.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, it's an opportunity to dive deeper into a specific album and what an album to do it. Spoiler, Sam, I really like this album.
Oh, right, good.
So I guess we can start with, I want you to go first here, because discovering the album, you discovered it before I did.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, the first song I'd ever heard from Peter Gabriel was Sledgehammer.
Makes sense.
And so, for the longest time, all I knew about Peter Gabriel was, the guy that sang Sledgehammer. That was even before I realised, Peter Gabriel was in Genesis. Yeah. What a coincidence.
How far we've come since then.
Yes. I do now know that he was in Genesis, and believe it or not, he made some other songs. Some of those songs being on an album called So.
Yeah.
I also knew the Kate Bush one.
Don't Give Up.
Don't Give Up. Yep. I heard that as well, because I had also discovered Kate Bush, and so I heard the two of them together. I was like, wow, what an amazing song. And so I ended up, once I started getting into listening to albums in full and getting involved in that culture, I had to give So a try. And boy, was I glad I did, because it is brilliant. I haven't listened to any other Peter Gabriel albums as of yet. I do intend to at some point, as you know. But at the moment, I'm happy to say that Peter Gabriel So is a brilliant album and certainly deserves the acclaim that it's got. And I'm really excited to be talking about it today.
And the spotlight we're giving it.
Yes, exactly.
For the first episode, yeah. I think it is one of the most iconic albums of the 80s. Like, that album cover, everybody who is into music knows it. It's kind of like on the Rolling Stone, when I was first getting into music, the Rolling Stone top 500 albums lists. I would always see this album and be like, okay, that's one I need to listen to. Yeah. Peter Gabriel, I'll remember that name.
And it doesn't even say anything on it.
Yeah, it's very, we'll get into that. In terms of my personal discovery of the album, much like you, I knew Sledgehammer first. What some people won't know about me is that I used to have a great aversion to the 80s and synths and the bombast of it. And that still does sometimes come out in the really cheesy, synthetic sounding stuff, as you will have seen in our discography rankings. But I think I'm a lot more open-minded than I was. The 80s has sort of seeped into me slowly. I mean, hell, the first discography we did was Depeche Mode, which are like very synth
That
pop.
shows how far you've come.
So yeah, New Sledgehammer first. Then I'm talking like 6 months ago maybe. I was having a discussion on Discord and someone was like, "You've heard In Your Eyes before," and I'm like, "I've not heard In Your Eyes." No, you definitely have. So then I listened to it and I had never heard it before.
No.
I didn't recognise it,
I hadn't
but it
heard
was a
it
brilliant song.
until recently.
And yeah, the rest was new to me. I only recently heard it for the first time, and I'm quite excited to talk about it. And we'll move on now to a section where I'm just going to be blabbering on for a bit.
Okay.
Because I kind of wanted to contextualise the album, give some background, and yeah, I'll just get straight into it. The album was co-produced by Daniel Lanois, who also co-produced The Joshua Tree by U2, and a lot of later Bob Dylan albums. He's a very prolific producer, very well regarded, and I think this album is a big reason for that. This was the year before The Joshua Tree.
Yeah, I was thinking Joshua Tree was later.
Yeah, so much less experimental than his previous albums, but sort of still has a sort of creative side to it. It's not just selling out.
No.
It has a lot of craft going into it. It's a fusion of pop, soul, art rock, sort of African and Brazilian music, the sort of the world music kind of stuff.
Yes.
This is what I was saying, I'll say that in a minute about the album cover. There's a pressure from the label to properly name the album, because his first 4 albums were all
Peter
self-titled.
Gabriel, yeah.
Peter Gabriel 1, 2, 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And so he called it So as kind of a middle finger. It's
Yeah,
like, oh, you want a
fine.
name? You want a name? I'll call it So. And it's like, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's just like,
You want a name?
Yeah.
I've given it one.
which I think is quite funny that he's sort of just making fun of the label, which is, you know,
I like him.
that was another artist in the 80s, the Replacements were doing with Let It Be and Tim, were both sort of sarcastic titles for their albums.
Some sort of thing I do.
Yeah. And this was definitely the album that took Peter Gabriel from like a respected cult artist into a mainstream star.
Yeah.
Because if you're into music, you knew Peter Gabriel as the guy from Genesis, and he had some interesting solo albums. This put him in the mainstream.
Yes.
Which some people take that as putting them off this album, which I think if you just listen to the album removed from that context, it is an artistic statement still, even if it is more poppy than his other stuff. It was nominated for the Grammy Album of the Year, but it lost to Graceland by Paul Simon, which I don't know how I feel about that. That's a pretty good album, but it's not so.
It's
and
just not so.
an interesting tidbit about the track listing, which is to note about this album, is that the original vinyl track listing is different to the track listing you'll get in the reissues and the CDs and on streaming.
Yeah, and this one's an original, so I was missing that track.
And also, Gabriel initially wanted In Your Eyes to be the closing track. That's why it's the closing track on streaming and on CD. But it had to be placed earlier on the vinyl edition because there was more room for the stylus to vibrate to be able to hear the bass line. So, because it's quite prominent in the song.
It is.
So, which is quite an interesting tidbit. Cost £200,000 to make. It was recorded at Gabriel's home with Daniel Lanois and David Rhodes. Those are like the
Classic
key,
David
the key
Rhodes.
three. Tony Levin plays bass, David Rhodes plays guitar.
Fantastic musicians.
Several drummers, including Stuart Copeland from The Police, plays hi-hat on one song, I think it's Sledgehammer, and plays the full drum kit. He's actually allowed to play the full drum kit on another song, which is quite cool. Nile Rodgers plays guitar on In Your Eyes, which is...
In Your Eyes is really stacked with people, because you've got Yusun Adore coming in at the end, and Jim Kerr from Simple Minds on backing vocals.
And of course, obviously, Gabriel could afford all these great session musicians. He was well respected, so they all wanted to work with him. And then, of course, Kate Bush on Don't Give Up. So that's kind of the background that I looked into the album, and I think it does well to sort of contextualise the album. And maybe you learnt something. Probably not, because you should look on Wikipedia and find all that.
Well, I will say, David Rhodes, he also plays on The Colour of Spring, but
Right, okay, that's interesting.
Plays on Living in Another
He was
World.
very involved in this. Like I said, a lot of it was Gabriel, Lanois and Rhodes sort of working together. Though apparently it was quite a relaxed atmosphere. They all kind of came in wearing hard hats and like, we're going into work today, which is a bit when you're working your £200,000 album, but it's funny.
Yeah, Rhodes and Levin, they were long time touring musicians with him.
So And yeah, finding out Stuart Copeland played on this was great because he's one of the greatest drummers of all time, in my opinion. So
Pretty cool.
yeah, and then we're kind of going to go into some of the songs. So the way I want to start this is talking about the lead single, because inevitably that is what you hear first when you know about the album, and the lead single is Sledgehammer. And I kind of want to focus for now on the music video, because that's kind of
the Aardman animation.
that's kind of what helped make it so big. So if you want to take the lead on that.
All right. Well, yes. The music video, I think it won an award. Was it?
It was the Grammy.
The Grammy, for best music video. It was produced by Aardman Animations, who we will all know nowadays for producing the likes of Wallace and Gromit, Chicken Run, Shaun the Sheep, and there is a connection with the music video and Wallace and Gromit, because Nick Park, who created Wallace and Gromit, he was producing it from 1981, the first Wallace and Gromit film, A Great Day Out. And by the time this came around, it had been about 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And he came on board, and the kind of deal that he had with Aardman, I'm sure I'm not getting all the details right, but the deal with Aardman was, you come on board and help us make this music video for Peter Gabriel, and we'll fund the completion of A Great Day Out and complete it under our name. So yeah, he did that. Got some recognition for that, being part of that team.
Grand Day Out was...
That was 3 years later, 1989, A Great Day Out came out, or Grand Day Out.
Grand Day
Out.
Out.
And this is what really gave Aardman Animation his name. I think Morph had come out before that, but I think this gave them the acclaim, the respect that they really deserved for being masters of the craft. And it's a really interesting music video because it is just a visual representation of kind of the crazier parts of Gabriel's music, and it's so visually interesting that it really does accompany the music so well. And even in some of the stranger parts, like the dancing chickens, just come in seemingly out of nowhere. But the whole thing is stop motion.
So unique for the time.
It took so long to do. I'm not 100% certain on the time scale.
Yeah.
But it was really hard work. And I know from Wallace and Gromit that it would take them a whole day to do 4 seconds worth of footage. And that was something that Peter Gabriel had to work with as well. And they put him under glass, I think, to do it. And he'd spend 10 hours a day under this glass with all of these animations going around, all the animators working on all these different elements. And there are a lot of elements going on in it. And even the parts with the dancers at the end, that's all still stop motion. And it really is quite a feat. And I'm glad that it did win the Grammy, because it's probably one of the best music videos out there, in my opinion, just from the production side of things.
Yeah, for the time as well, it was before Wallace and Gromit in terms of originality.
Even now, stop motion music videos aren't really popular or common.
They should be though.
Yeah,
I guess it's because they take so long to make.
Yeah, but that shows you how much how artistic Peter Gabriel is in all facets of his production.
Yeah, very well said. I just wanted to touch on the music video a little bit, just because I think it was very important to the success of not only that single, but the whole album.
Yeah.
Because obviously MTV was becoming a thing, and the music video, late 80s into the 90s, was becoming very important. But yeah, the song itself, Sledgehammer, like I said, I wasn't massive on it the first time I heard it. I was like, oh, 80s. But it is very in your face, and but there is a real craft to this album. Everything feels so carefully put together and polished and slaved upon in a similar way to Bruce Springsteen's Born to Run album feels like. And that is true, that album took about 8 months to make, and they fired 3 different drummers, and that's a whole other episode. But it has the same vibe where everything feels so perfect. You listen to it on headphones, just every element here is just being slaved upon and worked on again and again and again until it's perfect, just how Peter Gabriel wants it. And I think that shows in that song. It is not my favourite on the album, but I still think it's really, really great. It is a classic song for a reason, and it makes total sense that this was the big hit on the album. And I know that you like it more than I do.
It's my feel-good track. Yeah. I'm not going to lie. Every good thing that happens to me, I've got to accompany it with a session with Sledgehammer. Yeah. It really is a fantastic song to me.
So, I guess then, so you have the lead single, and then you buy the album maybe, because you think Sledgehammer, that's a great song, this album has Sledgehammer. You put it on the turntable, you're in 1986, let's centre ourselves.
Yes, back in time.
Then I think the second most important thing about an album, other than the lead single, because that's what gets you to buy it,
Yeah.
or at least in those days got you to buy it, is the opening track.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I will be stressing this throughout this series, how important the opening track is.
I agree.
Red Rain. Now, I do like Sledgehammer a lot, and you see that in my track ratings. To me, Red Rain is a perfect song. And it almost counts as a deep cut, because it wasn't
Yes.
that big.
It is a single, isn't
Yeah,
it? And there's a music video attached to it.
But it wasn't one that people kept coming back to, and I think
No.
that's really a shame, because I think it should have been a massive hit.
It's powerful.
It's so catchy, so powerful, very like gravelly vocal performance from Peter Gabriel. He's really getting into it,
It's deep.
and I think it really sets up the album really, really well. What are your thoughts on Red Rain?
I think, it's a very...
You weren't so big on it at first, were you?
No, I wasn't. When I just heard it outside the album context, I wasn't 100% sure on it. But that's probably because I liked the songs that I knew on it so much. It's like, well, it ain't like that.
Yeah.
But no, it really is such a brooding song. And you're right, it sets the tone. And you have a certain expectation of it. And yeah, everything about this album is established in Red Rain. The production and how everything, like you said, comes together for a reason. It all feels very purposeful. And yeah, I do love how gravelly Gabriel is on it. It's so enjoyable, and you really do get immersed in it.
It kind of reminded me the vocal performance of like The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, when we talked about that album where he's like getting a bit more grimy and intense, rather than
and
the sort
it
of medieval
is an
stuff.
intense song. He gets I think he gets a little bit more intense in the album, but in a different way. This is intense in a very emotional way, and there's something so immersive about it.
So I think we both agree. Perfect opening track. I wouldn't want anything else to open the album. I think that is the perfect song.
It sets the scene very well.
And then I kind of want to talk about the idea of the deep cut, because I very much believe that, any great album, you can have great singles.
Yeah.
You need the album tracks to stand up as well.
Of course you do.
If they don't, then it leaves quite an unfulfilling experience.
Yeah, listening to the album then isn't really worth it.
Yeah.
It become a singles band.
And as much as I would like to just talk about Red Rain again, I'm going to not do that and not be boring, because there are other really good songs on this album. And the one that really gets me is That Voice Again. I really, really like that song. It's been... Are you not a big fan?
No, I am.
Okay. It's been running rings around my head, essentially. Really stuck in my head a lot. And again, a powerful vocal performance. And just... There's something about this album, I think it might be because of how polished it is. Because it came out the same year as Invisible Touch, funnily enough.
Yeah.
And to me, I know you love Invisible Touch, but this was Peter Gabriel saying...
Not as much as this.
Yeah, look how much better than you I am, Genesis. Look how well I'm doing this pop style. Because that album was very, bombastic and in your face. And this kind of is as well, but in a more artistic and nuanced way. And... Again, the session musicians really, really aid that.
That Voice Again, it's a closer on the A side.
It is, yeah.
And it is a really good song.
Yeah, so that was the one, especially on this last listen, I was like, that is a great song. So what would you pick as your favourite deep cut?
I would hands down pick Mercy Street, which is a tribute to a poet called Anne Sexton. And it's
heavy.
It is. And it itself feels like poetry to me. And musically, it's not doing a lot.
It's minimalist.
Yeah. But there's something... It just transports me away, and the 6 minutes flies by, and oh my God, when you hear it live and see Peter Gabriel live must be an amazing experience, because I've seen clips of it live on YouTube.
He loves putting on a show.
Yeah, it's very theatrical, and that was something that caused him controversy amongst Genesis.
Tony Banks.
Yes. But it really makes it an interesting experience. And then he makes Mercy Street last for 10 minutes when in the Live in Athens
That
video.
makes sense, though. It's an atmospheric song.
It is, and what a brilliant word. It is so atmospheric, and there is something so brooding about it. It's swelling, and it doesn't really climax as such, as much as just floats through.
Yeah, it's a very strange song.
It is.
Because my first listen of the album, I wasn't that big on it, but I let it sort of sink into me on the second listen yesterday, and it really stuck with me.
Yeah,
that is a fan favourite track for sure. I think it's one of the...
I guess that's why it's a deep cut, but he does play it live.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Yeah, that would probably be my second choice for my deep cut behind that voice again. And then I want to talk about the closing track because it is almost as important as the opening track.
Well,
to
which
leave you,
one?
Yeah, this is the thing. To leave you on a good note, you know.
Yeah.
And this is where I think the contrast between this version and the streaming version is different because We Do What We're Told is the worst song on the album.
Yeah, I agree.
Is a limp closer.
It's down there.
It's a limp closer for me. It has no message. It has no.
No.
It sort of ends. Oh, I guess the album ended. Whereas closing on In Your Eyes.
Yeah.
Oh my God! I can see why Peter Gabriel wanted that initially to be the closer because it's euphoric. It's exciting. It's dense, but it's so listenable. And in fact, not to spoil my track ratings, but my favourite tracks are the opening and closing track on that version, In Your Eyes and Red Rain. I just think it's so anthemic as well as being euphoric. And I love that song with all my heart. It's a perfect pop song. And yeah, I can see the initial reasoning of putting We Do What We're Told as the closer for practical reasons. Now that I've read that, that makes sense.
Yeah, we want to just make the end track the one that hasn't got as much going on.
Yeah. But I think really it is the better listening experience because you also get This Is the Picture as well on the other version, which I actually think is a pretty good song. So I do prefer that track list over the original track list personally. So what?
Well, this is the interesting thing because that's how you've listened to the album.
Exactly.
I've listened to it in this form, and I've had to go out of my way to find This Is the Picture just so that I can get all the songs that are intended for this. And it's a really it's. I wouldn't say it's the weakest song on the album. One that I think is a bit less so. But it's certainly a weak closer. Instead of going out with the bang that it came in with Red Rain, Sledgehammer, and Don't Give Up, it kind of it goes quietly. It's like he's not slamming the door. It's just closing on his way out.
It belongs in the middle of the B-side, I think, rather than right at the end.
Yeah,
it's and then pick it back up at the end.
No, it's not the song that you want to be your last impression.
No, because it doesn't really sound. Other than Mercy Street, it doesn't really fit with the rest of the album much either. But it's sort of that similar vein of the atmospheric, but not as good as Mercy Street.
But it does feel a little bit like a goodbye.
A little bit,
but not really cathartic enough for so.
Yeah, I think In Your Eyes works better as a closer, personally. Yeah. And then I guess what to talk about then is sort of the impact that it had on music history, which it's credited as a mix of accessible pop but with a clever side. It's sort of, you can tell this was the man in Genesis, even if it's this like really commercialized sound.
Yeah.
I feel like anybody could listen to this and enjoy it. It's very music for the masses.
Go and check out the Depeche Mode albums video for more information about that.
But there's still like I said, it's so layered and intricate that you can discover things on each listen about the songs that you didn't pick up on before. Stephen Wilson of Porcupine Tree, who also has done a lot of production work, there's a quote from him I've got, which he said, "People think the 80s were a shallow and superficial era, but so is an album that is really smart." So, which, I think the reputation the 80s gets is probably from people who don't dig deeper, which is where I was guilty a lot of the time. Now I have dug deeper, artists like The Replacements and The Cure and Peter Gabriel. Talking Heads, Kate Bush, there's so much good stuff in it. The Smiths, that it doesn't all just have these like horrible synths throughout all the songs. So what do you think about the importance of the album?
I think even if people say this is overrated because of how commercial it is, a lot of people will know Peter Gabriel because of this. And even if you've gone away, listened to the other stuff and you think it's better, most of the time you're gonna know him because he did Sledgehammer, because he did Don't Give Up. This has kind of put Peter Gabriel on the map as a solo artist. So if for no other reason, it's important for that. But I disagree that it's overrated. I haven't listened to any of the other stuff. I'll hold my hands up to it. I'm sure it's brilliant. I know songs from the other albums and I think they're great, but I think this is brilliant. And the songs on it, they're just as valid. Just because
it deserves its reputation.
Just because they've come to more success doesn't mean that it's invalidated. That doesn't make it commercial just because people like it. I think people like this for a reason. I think it's
more that the diehard Peter Gabriel fans felt quite betrayed because his early stuff is a lot weirder. And it's sort of like, you know, like Games Without Frontiers, even that's one of the more poppy songs. That's a bit of a strange...
Oh, it's still strange.
Yeah. But I think this was him full on going like, selling out, which I don't like that phrase.
But selling out in Peter Gabriel terms is not the casual definition of selling out.
Because he put everything into this album.
Yeah, there's so much effort in it. And
so,
they are classics.
Yeah, I agree with you. For the final little section of the video, we're just going to run through our track ratings for the individual songs. I'll run through mine first.
Okay.
And obviously I will have the streaming track list and you'll have that track list, I imagine. So I'll just run through these quite quickly. Red Rain, 10 out of 10 for me. Amazing. Should have been a hit. Sledgehammer, 9 out of 10. Really, really great. Really strong pop song. Might surprise you, Don't Give Up, 8 out of 10. I think it's pretty good. It's a bit slow.
Yep.
It's a bit long. But I do think it's really nice. I like the duet. If anything, that is the one song where I'm like, you got Kate Bush and Peter Gabriel, two of the most eccentric people in music, making this like quite slow ballad. Yeah, and it's good, but I was like, it could have been more for me. Yeah, That Voice Again, 9 out of 10. Mercy Street, 9 out of 10. Big Time, I give an 8. It's the most aggressively 80s song on the album. It is so just, you know.
Yeah.
And then We Did What We Were Told, I gave a 7. It's the only 7 on the album. Everything else is 8 or higher.
Right.
And then This Is the Picture, 8. It's probably the most bizarre song. The most like the early stuff, maybe. And then, yeah, In Your Eyes is another 10, because it's a perfect pop song. And my overall rating for the album is a 9 out of 10.
Very nice.
I think it's excellent.
So I put I've ranked mine in order from a lowest.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I've gone Big Time. This is my least favourite song. It's a 6.
Mm-hmm.
Still, not a 6. It's not really comparable to 6s I've given for the albums.
Yeah, track ratings is different.
It's different. This is one of my favourite albums. I'm like saying, you know, if I'm going to have to choose, that one is probably the lowest.
It doesn't really fit, does it?
No, it's a little bit too aggressive. I don't think the rest of the album is aggressive, but that seems a little bit too much so. And then I put We Do What We're Told. I've given that a 7.
Same as me.
Yeah. Then I put That Voice Again, and I've also given that a 7. I think it's great, but I think that there are some harder hitters. That's why that's a 7. Then I've put in This Is the Picture, which I've had to listen to out of album.
That's a good song.
It is. I've given it an 8. I've had to listen to it out of album though, so because it's not on this. But it is good. Red Rain, I've also given an 8. Then Don't Give Up, still at an 8. I agree with you. It's a bit too slow, a bit too long. If you're not in the right frame of mind for it, it's going to drag a tad.
Yeah.
But I do think it's very powerful, and it's such a nice song, really.
Yeah.
Overall, I think the workings between the good and the bad, it's nice. And what a pair to have together. Nice bit of history there. And especially since Kate Bush was such a nervous performer, it shows that she had a lot of trust in Peter Gabriel. Yeah. And
they worked together she was on Games Without Frontiers as well.
There you go.
Yeah.
They just sort of goes to prove my point that I do believe that Peter Gabriel's probably quite a decent chap. I quite like him. Yeah. Then we're up to the 9s with In Your Eyes. And then number 2, Mercy Street, number 9. And then Sledgehammer's a 10 for me.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it. It's a total classic. I'll go back to it again and again.
Yeah, overall thoughts. I think this is a high point of 80s pop. I think like those sort of 1001 albums you need to hear before you die. I think when you think of 80s pop music, this is probably the first one you think of, because it is that iconic, it is that important. And again, the word polished. If you're just looking for straight up pop music, it doesn't really get much better. I think it has a lot of artistic integrity as well, and you can really tell the amazing session musicians they had, like Nile Rodgers and Stuart Copeland and all these people. Like, it's incredible. Catchy songs, really great stuff. What was your overall rating out of 10? Oh,
I'd also given it a 9.
Yeah.
That because of those 2 other tracks don't really get it up to a 10. But yeah, maybe in time. We'll see.
Final thoughts?
Love it.
There we go. You heard it here first. It's a great album, objectively.
Yeah. We are the arbiters of what is good music.
Obviously. Yeah. So, thank you very much for joining us. We will still be doing the Cardigans and the Beat. You finished the Cardigans listening. I'm almost done.
I'm always ahead. Just
Yeah.
so you know, I always get the videos would be coming out a lot quicker if it was just me.
Yeah, and it would also be going a lot quicker if it was you were the
Yeah.
only guest star, because
Exactly.
I'm listening for a lot of other episodes.
Exactly. But if it was just me, it would also be a lot more boring.
We'd run out of artists pretty quick, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Cardigans is coming. I'm nearly finished. I think I'm just over. Am I halfway? I think I'm halfway. And then yes, the Cardigans and the Beat will be coming probably in a few weeks. I'm editing Weezer at the moment. It'll probably already be out by the time you see this, so ignore that. Yeah, but thank you for watching and hope to see you again soon.